Intelligent Ramblings with your host, Bill Alton. Co-hosted by Gary Glenn and William Howington with help from John Cohn.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Intelligent Ramblings. I'm Bill Alton. I'm your host. My co-host, Gary Glenn, William Howington, and John Cohn. Well, gentlemen, how's your week been? Anything interesting going on in the world out there, in your world?
No, not really. Just been umpiring baseball.
Well, speaking of William Howington, we want to welcome William back to the show. He's been off on assignment, and he's finally back to join us. Well, we just dive into it. The Arizona House advances repeal of the state's near total abortion ban to the Senate. That's the Senate from Arizona, that is, not the Senate in Washington, D.C. Well, it seems like their near total ban is fixing to be not total at all. I think the abortion issue has got a lot of attention, and now people are trying to save their jobs by being against it. What say you? Gary?
That doesn't surprise me. When you put it in a flat statement, like, are you in favor of legal abortion? The majority of people will say they are. However, there are a number of qualifiers to that. Are you in favor of a legal abortion up till what point? When does the collection of cells that's a fetus become a human being? You know, you have to have some kind of a point of that, otherwise you might as well just commit infanticide once the baby is born. I don't see a whole lot of states saying they're in favor of that. So it's a matter of debate and a matter of conscience and a matter of what the woman and the family and the physicians and all of that. I'm not so sure up until the point where we have to make a decision on when is the fetus a person, and that's a tough call. I've always said, I'm not really in favor of abortion, but I'm not really in favor of making it illegal, because all that'll mean is people will have illegal abortions, and then you'll have people dying trying to abort themselves. I think it's going to be less of a problem as the technology continues to evolve. You've heard me say on this show before, I think we not see it, but there'll be artificial wombs someday that if a woman doesn't want to carry a baby to term, she simply gives it to some place that will create an artificial womb and they can just grow one. I think we're closer to the planet Krypton than we think in that particular instance. So it's a tough call. But you're not going to see, I don't think you're going to see total abortion stand up almost anywhere. I mean, are we really going to condemn women to bear a child that's a victim of a rape or incest, and every day she has that pregnancy, she has to relive that? Now, granted, some women will do that, but they do it on their own. That's their choice. It's one of the stickier things that we have these days.
Right. John, what's your think on that?
Well, I think that what you were saying is right, in that all of a sudden the GOP is figuring out just how bad their position is, and they're really vulnerable. I wish I could say that. And they're trying to backtrack and get away from the earlier discussion of banning abortions completely. I mean, there were some legislatures out there that were discussing no exceptions. The good news, and we had an abortion ban in by de facto that was at about 22 weeks under Roe versus Wade. And so what's happening now is they're going from 6 weeks to now to 15 weeks in some cases. and they're working their way back to what seemed to be a working amount of time for a woman to be able to make her choice and deal with the pregnancy, either continue and have the baby or not.
William, any thoughts?
Well, I think there has to be exceptions to every situation. Obviously, I don't think God have a total ban, but cases of rape and incest, where the mother's in danger, I think you need to have a law saying that it's okay to abort. There has to be a decision there between the doctor and the mother. But no, I don't think you should have a total abortion ban completely.
So I think we're pretty much all in agreement on that there's reasons for abortion and there's reasons for not having abortions, no doubt.
But
Well,
again, when does the fetus become a person? When do they have, or it has, or whatever you want to determine? When do they have human rights? That's something that.
Well, I think what we had in Roe versus Wade is a system where the fetus was viable most of the time at about 22 to 24 weeks. So, that it would survive in most cases outside the womb at that point in time. So that gave the mother that amount of time to decide what to do. And that was settled case law for 40 years, 50 years.
well, next subject. Ukraine thanks U.S. for billions that we finally are going to be giving them very soon. And they hit Russia with a secret long-range missile that we supplied. You're welcome, Russia. Hope you enjoy it.
Good. I hope they hit them again real soon.
Well, I think that the fact that we've now supplying them once again, that they will pick it up real quick, because if I'm guessing right, they probably been conserving some of their arms because they didn't know how much they had left, and now they got a fresh supply that'll keep them going for who knows how long. I think the war will change back into Ukraine's side again, as it did several months ago. They looked like they were just fixing to push them out of the country, and then all of a sudden Russia regained, started making gains. But big missiles, something else for Russia to look at.
Yeah, well, but that funding wasn't popular with everyone in the Congress. They wanted it tied to border security and stuff that seems to me to be unrelated. Some sort of.
First they did, and then they didn't.
And then the package also included a bunch of money.
Well, Trump stuck his nose in it, and it slowed everything down.
Right.
If Trump hadn't stuck his nose in it, they'd have had arms months ago.
I don't know anything about that nose sticking.
Well, all of it's tied together with a package.
Basically,
all of it's tied to a package of aid to Israel too.
Yeah. Well, I think Ukraine's getting like $8 billion, and Ukraine's getting like $5 billion. I mean, Ukraine's getting $8 billion, Israel's getting $5 billion. And as far as Trump sticking his nose in it, he told several key Republicans, do not pass this because I don't want Biden to get the credit for it. Which was, like, really? You give a shit that much about your own country that you're gonna stop the aid we're sending to Ukraine?
Bill, I think the number for Ukraine is actually 60 billion. 60 billion.
That's a lot of billions.
Yeah.
That's a lot of long-range missiles.
I love
You're
it.
welcome, Russia.
The more pressure we can put on Russia in Ukraine, the better off we all are.
I agree. We'll catch up on this chat from Jay Johnson. How about when they feel pain? About 15 weeks. I'm in agreement with it. It's got to be pretty damn quick. I'm not anti-abortion, but I'm almost anti-abortion. I think Gary put it very well.
Well, just to backtrack on that for a minute, the better birth control gets, the more this will become a moot point.
I agree. Well, speaking of Trump, comes out that tabloid publisher David Pecker, what an appropriate name, from the National Enquirer, pledged to be Trump's eyes and ears, and other part, I guess, is Pecker from the National Enquirer, and what he was doing was he was buying stories that were coming out that were negative to Mr. Trump, and he would buy those stories and then he would squash them, wouldn't print them. But he was throwing stuff in the National Enquirer about the people that were running against Trump, even in the Republican Party. He did a bad story on, what's that senator from Texas or Arizona? Was
Cruz.
doing real, yeah, Cruz. He did a story on Cruz, and it affected his campaign. So, I mean, is that right? I mean, is that something that's permissible, William?
Well, obviously, the National Enquirer does not have that good of credibility as far as truthfulness in news. So, no, I don't think he ought to be doing that. But again, it's tabloid. It's not a news source.
Jay Johnson, and once again, why protect Ukraine border but not our borders? Well, the thing with that is we protect our borders on one part. The part you're talking about is Mexico, I'm sure, and it's got a lot of fence on it, but we don't have any fence up on the Canadian border, and we don't have any fence up on the eastern border over there in New York and states that border the East Coast, and we don't have any fences up in the southeast. I mean, if they land in Louisiana, good luck to them. I wouldn't want to land in Louisiana. But if they cross over into Mexico to Texas, that's where everybody wants to put borders. That's, I don't.
I'm not sure we'd have an either or.
Yeah, we can do both. That's a good point, Gary.
Why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be both and? The Biden administration was controlling Facebook and Twitter. He didn't control my Facebook.
Doesn't control mine.
Pretty much anything I want to post, I post.
I've been in jail a couple of times with some of my posts, so I'm not really affirmative on that.
I've put negative posts about the Democrats and the Republicans. They never mess with mine. So I'm not sure what you're trying to get, what point you're trying to make there.
I said something about the terrorists and where they're from. You got put in jail.
What?
The terrorists and where they're from and what
terrorists.
religion they are. Yeah, terrorists.
That may be a code word.
Well,
all this artificial intelligence. Some words and phrases are automatically singled out. So
I don't know what the deal is.
Me either. I mostly stick to posting stuff about my grandsons and where I've been and what I eat.
They control the narrative of those platforms. I don't see how they control the narrative.
That's a lot of control if you're saying they control what is said on Facebook and Twitter.
Well, if they did try to control it, they learned from Trump. So, I mean, and the Russians, i.e. the Russians.
I don't do Twitter, so I don't have an opinion there.
I'm with you, Gary. I have never tweeted.
I don't tweet or anything like that.
I will say, YouTube did something to us, to one of these podcasts. I was making a comment during one of the early episodes, and it was about the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza. And as soon as I typed the word Hamas in my comment, it disappeared. It went away.
Huh.
And I think I mentioned something about it at the time, but true. I mean, I couldn't even complete my comment. It just went away. So I lost a lot of sleep that night thinking, damn, I'm on a list now.
John, you've been on a list for a while, John.
Yeah.
We all been on a list for a while. I promise you, the people are watching. The words we use are words that they pick out and with their computers, and they look at us and they go, "Oh, it's just four old guys talking trash."
Of course.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Well, speaking of the internet and stuff like that, to TikTok or not, it seems as though Biden signed some bill that says China's got a certain amount of time to divest themselves of TikTok or it will be gone. It'll be banned in the United States. But you can still TikTok. If you're a TikToker, you can still use the platform. I don't know how they can. I don't see how they can ban it.
I think you're talking some serious First Amendment rights issues there. I understand that you can't use things for terrorist platforms. We're not free to do everything that we want to do, obviously, but speech, I don't know. That's I'm not really much in a favor of censoring a bunch of that kind of stuff. Look where consider the source. Where does it come from? If it comes from China, obviously they've got some kind of a bone to pick or an axe to grind. If they're trying to camouflage that, then we've got a problem there. It's like all these people that spoof you now with calls. You get a call on your caller ID that'll say somewhere important, like the hospital, and you pick it up and it's Spectrum. I mean, there's so much falsity going on, if that's a word, if I can use that word, going on in everything that you see. It's hard to believe anything anymore.
It really is. I mean, I get those calls all the time.
Let me tell you, if you are getting your news from Twitter and TikTok and Facebook, there's something seriously wrong with your ass.
I'm in full agreement with that, Gary.
I mean, come on. You're going to let some clown in Nacogdoches, Louisiana, tell you what's going on in the world?
No.
Yeah.
Seriously. John McEnroe, you can't be serious. But I guess some people are.
Some people are. Well.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of nostalgic, seems to we have a wave of campus unrest over the Gaza war. Columbia University is the epicenter, and it's it's reached all the way out to the left coast at, I think, UCLA. University of Texas said, we're not going to have any of that here. So they tried it in Texas, but first thing they saw were troopers and billy cubs coming at them. So they, I think that ended there pretty quick. It's kind of nostalgic, for us, and the fact that we're looking at it and going, oh, well, they're just protesting, and oh, well, we're not going to pay much attention to it because Vietnam, remember that?
Yeah.
That was a central part of our lives for years.
Just slightly.
And
yeah.
we saw this years and years ago.
Well, William, and I
back in the 60s.
You had a draft number, didn't you? You had a draft number, didn't you, William?
Oh, yeah. I was random sequence number
Why did you?
011.
Ooh, you're lucky it stopped when it did.
It stopped the year I turned 18.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd have
Well,
gone.
I can't remember. I can't remember what one mine. I would have too, but I can't. Mine was neither really high or really low. So I decided
think
to
my
go on to
brother's-
school and take my chances.
I think my brother Jimmy was 3.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah, he was like,
he went to a military.
he went to VMI.
He went to a military institute anyway. So
Yeah. I don't know if that's how it got him out of it or it ended right at the right time.
well, it was.
Hey,
ending.
Georgia.
It was ending when we were seniors. So yeah. The whole thing is, you're allowed to peacefully assemble and protest as long as it doesn't degenerate into something like anti-Semitism. And the fact that some people disagree with the Israeli policies is not necessarily anti-Semitic. I think, again, reasonable people can see when people are being persecuted for just being who and what they are versus what they think about their policies. I mean, I don't agree with some of Netanyahu's policies, but I don't think I'm an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
Well, while we got a second, Gary, your talk last week, you said things about people not putting things in trash. Why don't they put them in the trash can where they belong? I'll give you a quick story about that. I walked outside on the back patio when I was the executive chef at a no-name country club, and I saw my cooks out there smoking cigarettes, which was fine with me because I smoked at that point, and they were throwing the butts on the ground. And I looked at them and I said, "Whose butts are these?" And of course, nobody said they're mine. I said, "Well, let me put something that y'all understand. Don't throw cigarette butts on the ground. Put them out, put them in your pocket, whatever you got to do. Butt them, militarily butt them is the way we used to call it, where you just knock the fire off of it and stick it in your pocket." I said, because when I come back out here and I find another cigarette butt ever, I'm going to ban smoking. When you come in this place, you will not be able to smoke until you leave. And I can do that because I'm the executive chef. Or I'll fire you. I don't care either way. And, bonus, I'm going to come out here and smoke. And I'll give a damn what you think about it. That's the end of that. And my second point, because that I do put things in trash. That irritates me really bad. Roundabouts. You were asking, why do we need roundabouts? I actually like them. Because you don't have to slow down. You just got to look to your left and ain't nobody coming. You just keep on moving. You never slow down. It speeds traffic up. Is it expensive? Yes. But it makes it much safer. All you got to do is look. If there ain't nobody coming, you hit that roundabout and keep on going. So I'll have to disagree with you on that. I do like the roundabouts. But I wrote those down while you were talking last time, and we meant to bring it up last week, and I just saw it sitting here, and I said, well, good time to bring that up. Speaking of that, why don't we go on to another portion of the show about right now.
Well, I appreciate Billy's input on that, and we just agree to disagree on some of that kind of stuff. I can see the point, but I just don't know if it's worth the expense for us to just slow down for that fraction of a second that it takes to count to 1, 2, or 3, and then keep going. But to each his own. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about what do we want. I mean, what do we truly want? Well, and versus wants and needs. Now, I think we'd all like a little peace and quiet in our lives. We need a roof over our heads. We need food to eat. We need clothes to wear, depending on what part of the world we're in, depending on how much clothes we need to wear. And around here, we need a car to drive, I suppose. But how do we get all of these things? Well, you work for them, right? Require some education or at least some training. Why is it so hard to get that across, particularly to younger folks now? Education, you understand, is a two-way street. We teach and we learn, and sometimes we learn by teaching. Ben Franklin said he was thoroughly convinced that whoever wants an education in this country needs to get one. There you go. See, there's the key. Whoever wants an education. And everybody doesn't have to go to college either. But you see, education also requires some cooperation. In fact, in the past, the purpose of child rearing, other than the fact that you love your kids and you want the best for them, was to make good citizens for the good of the country and the good of society. And now it's for the good of me. We've lost that ability to have a two-way street of cooperation, of living and listening and working together. We are not going to always agree on everything. And we have to work to see where we can agree. Some Republicans in Congress apparently haven't learned this. Kevin McCarthy didn't last very long as the Speaker of the House. They didn't suit him. And now Mike Johnson doesn't seem to suit him either. I think what happens is when people like McCarthy and Johnson got in that position of power, they had to see that in order to get things done, you have to kind of work with the other guys and gals to get anything done. And seeing all the hardliners on both sides of the aisle, I'm talking about left and right, they don't want that. They don't want it. Because you see, not only is the other side wrong, it's they're stupid and unpatriotic and just downright evil. You have that attitude, nothing's ever going to get done. Personally, I believe almost nobody speaks for me now. I'm liberal on some ideas, and I'm quite conservative on others, and I'm moderate on a lot of issues. But I am willing to see either side, both sides. At least I'll listen to you. We may not agree, but I'll listen to you. I might learn something. Imagine that. You see, reasonable people, I think, can come to an agreement most of the time. And the nature of compromise is I don't get everything I want, but you don't get everything you want either. And compromise is not necessarily a dirty word. Are there any reasonable people left in positions of authority? My wife has already threatened to vote out anybody who has incumbent by his or her name. Is that what it's going to take? Is that what it's going to take to break the gridlock? Just vote everybody out if they ever had incumbent by their name? Now, there's a few up there that are trying to work for the good of the country, but they seem to get fewer as the years go by. I fear, although, that that's not going to solve the problems of intolerance and unkindness in the society at large. That is another story entirely. That's my time out. Thanks for yours. I'm Gary Glenn.
This webcast is brought to you by William Lofton Photography. They can be found at williamlofton.com. Offering event residential portraiture at williamlofton.com.
Hi. So This week we hear a lot about the Fed funds rate, and I'm going to talk about it really as quickly and as at a high level as I can to make it interesting and make it apply to what goes on in our lives every day. So the formal definition of the Fed funds rate is it's a rate that controls a market that consists of domestic unsecured borrowings in U.S. dollars by depository institutions from other depository institutions and certain other entities, which means all that to say that the Fed funds rate is set by the Federal Reserve, and it applies to banks who lend to other banks, usually on an overnight basis. And what happens in the Fed funds market is that banks have excess reserves. They put them in the Fed funds market at the Fed funds rate. Right now it's 5.25% to 5.5%. And they loan that money to other banks that need it to build up their reserves, usually for the duration of one night. So it's overnight lending. The Fed can control inflation by raising the Fed funds rate. And what happens is that slows the amount of lending of excess reserves in the federal funds market. And so banks overall lend less. They slow down their lending, which has a kind of a multiplier effect on the economy. It slows down the rate of growth in the economy. So we're in kind of an unusual moment right now because the Fed has raised the Fed funds rate to a point where it's higher than the Treasury 2-year note rate. And usually they track right together, but the Fed funds rate tracks a little bit lower than the Treasury note rate because the Fed funds rate is like the most risk-free form of lending that's out there. And so the fact that the Fed funds rate is now higher than the Treasury 2-year note rate is interesting. It's unusual. It's happened 4 times in the last 20 or so years. It happened in 2001 and 2002. It happened 2004 to 2007, which was leading right up to the financial crisis and the Great Recession. 2018 to 2019, right at the beginning of the pandemic, that was kind of an unusual situation. And I will say the inflation that we're dealing with now and bringing under control has been building since 2018. And at the moment, 2023 to 24, the Fed funds rate, like I said, is a little bit higher than the Treasury note rate. Let's look at it in this graph. And sorry, it's not the greatest graph you ever saw, but the gray bars that you see vertically going up and down, those are recessions. And if you look all the way over to the right, you can see that the Fed funds rate has been higher for several months now than the 2-year Treasury note rate. So what that means is there's something artificial going on in the economy, and hopefully the Fed's strategy will slow the economy down and the more normal set of circumstances will come back into play. So that's my little talk about the Fed funds rate. If you want to see this talk or the graph or have any questions about something I've talked about or we all talk about at Intelligent Ramblings, visit the Facebook group and post your question. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
right, good evening. This is sports. The Atlanta Braves, with all their injuries, are playing some great baseball. Me and my son Alex went out to Houston last week and watched the Braves beat the Astros 3 games. So that was a good, fun trip for us. Then the Braves won 2 out of 3 from the defending World Series champion Texas Rangers. Again, they're playing good. Now they've started off winning 2 straight at home against the Marlins, and they're winning 3-1 right now in the top of the 5th inning. So if you want to turn over there and watch the Braves, you can. No, not really. Stay with us until we're over. In NASCAR this weekend in Talladega, Alabama, Tyler Reddick won, with Chase Elliott finishing 15th. On Friday, we went by there coming back from Texas, and I mean, it looked like Woodstock. People were camped out, and tents were up, and campers. We knew there was a race, but we didn't know it. But we just had to go by Talladega on Friday with the big race on Sunday. In Heisman Trophy news, the Downtown Athletic Club reinstated Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy today. That's something, considering they thought he had perceived illegal benefits. I think this is long overdue. Bush now has all the rights and the benefits that a Heisman Trophy winner gets. Bush said he was thrilled and looked forward to attending the ceremony this year. The Kansas City Chiefs extended Andy Reid's contract to the year 2029. Congratulations, and this is well deserved. Andy Reid, of course, the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, winning the Super Bowl back-to-back years. Matt Ryan in pro football signed a 1-day contract with the Atlanta Falcons so he could retire as a Falcon. I think Ryan did a good job with the Falcons, and let's hope that we can do good with Kirk Cousins. In PGA golf, this weekend's tournament is the Zurich Classic in New Orleans. It begins tomorrow. Scottie Scheffler won the Masters with an 11 under par. The NBA and NHL continued the playoffs this week. So if you're a basketball and hockey fan, you can tune into that. There's some good series going on between the NBA and NHL. Speaking of basketball, Caitlin Clark signed a $300,000 a year contract with the WNBA, which is pretty good, but considering that she'd signed a Nike contract worth $28 million over the next 8 years, and she's going to get a signature shoe out of this. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. I wish I was a girls basketball player signing a $28 million contract. That's all I have for sports. Sorry, it'll be a little longer next time.
Well, we are 3 minutes to talk with Bill Lofton, so let's get started with 3 minutes. I am here with Georgia Zumwalt, a journeyman beekeeper. A beekeeper.
How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing good, Georgia.
You notice I moved inside. I was set up outside, but the sun, it went away fast.
We lost the sun. I kept watching, and I saw it getting darker and darker and darker, and I kept hoping we'd finish up faster, but you've got a great background, so that's perfect, and we can see you perfectly. Tell me, why and how would you start beekeeping?
Well, okay, so I'll tell you how I started and why I started. I actually moved into a new subdivision many years ago. And first thing I wanted to do was put in my garden and waited for things to come up. And I was getting all these beautiful flowers, getting all excited. And then there was no fruit. Nothing was fruiting. And I realized it was because there were no pollinators in the neighborhood. It was a new subdivision, so all the topsoil had been removed. Things had not been able to recover from just all of that construction. So I went in and I actually had to take a paintbrush and I'd go to every single flower from flower to flower to flower, and I was actually being the bee. And that's when I first got the idea of, maybe I should get some bees. And at that time in my life, it was impossible. There was just too much going on. And then in 2018, I had time in my life. We were in a new place. I thought, I'm going to get bees. Finally, I'm going to do this. And the first thing I did is I went to a class. It was a combination package where there was the bee class where you had an all-day class. Actually, this was a two-part. So you sat in the classroom all day, learned about bees and what you need to know, at least the basics. And then the second part was a field day to where we could actually get in the hive and make sure that this is something that we were going to be able to do. Then I got my bees. And part of that, if you want to get bees, if you want to become a beekeeper, I highly recommend finding a bee club now before you ever become a beekeeper. There's lots of bee clubs. You can look at your state beekeeping association, and they usually have a list of all of the local or county-wide bee clubs, and just start going and absorbing as much as you can, because sometimes you just don't know what questions to ask, because you have no idea. I mean, my experience with honeybees before I started beekeeping was back when I was 7 years old, when I was running barefoot and I got stung. So that happens
to us all.
What's that?
Getting stung.
Oh, getting
everybody,
stung. Yes.
Everybody gets stung.
And I have to say that if you were thinking about becoming a beekeeper, you might get stung. I mean, literally, you're going to get stung. It happens. But if I wanted to show you out my bee yard, because I started with one colony. And so I just had the one hive, and then I was asking everybody, okay, what do I need to do to be successful? And the other beekeepers were saying, get a second hive, because you need to be able to pull resources from one to the other and move them around. And so I had two by the end of the season. And now this is my 7th season going in. I have 22.
Wow.
So that's what I mean.
That's a lot of honey.
Be careful what you get into. It's just amazing.
That can be a lot of honey. How much honey can you get out of 22?
It's funny. I had 22 this last season as well, but I got less honey last year because of how the season was. We got a lot of rain in the mornings, which washed a lot of the nectar out of the flowers, which meant the bees couldn't get it. They could get lots of pollen, but they couldn't get the nectar. So with those 22 colonies, I think it was about 200 gallons, or not gallons, 200 pounds of honey out of that. And the year prior, I had only, I think it was 7 colonies, and I got 300 pounds. Or not pounds, pounds. Sorry. I don't have my glasses on. I can't think straight. I took my glasses off so you don't see a reflection. But yeah, and really, even though I have 22 colonies, they're not all working colonies. Some of them are just being built out. I did some splits to allow my bees to grow and not swarm. I've caught some swarms, which is wonderful, but for me, swarms are just an amazing thing to experience. But I split my colonies, and when I split my colonies, that means I'm reducing the workforce, and they need to build back up. So especially the newer colonies with the new queen. So it's a really interesting art once you really try to get your head wrapped around all of this. But it's one of the just most wonderful things I've ever done. And I have some friends that have also gotten into it too, and they're having a great time. It's sometimes just chaos, but it is an incredible zen to be working in all of those hives. You have all of these stinging insects around you that, 50,000 in each hive, and you're just all of a sudden losing track of time because there's an incredible hum that starts happening that you just kind of get lost in that. It's wonderful.
I can only imagine. I think I told you about a group of bees that comes to a certain location on my property every year, and yes. I just walk in between them, and they don't bother me at all, and I just do what I'm going to, pick the weeds or whatever I'm going to do in that area. and it's amazing. They're just like they're at peace. They're with harmony, and
Right.
at peace with
Exactly.
nature. And I could just sit there for a while and just enjoy the ambiance of watching those bees. And there's literally 1,000 bees within a 4x4 spot, and it's just
Yep.
it's absolutely amazing to me.
It is.
Listen.
And the swarms are really gentle because they don't have a home to protect. They have consumed a bunch of honey before they've left their original hive body. And so their little bottoms can't even reach around to sting you most of the time. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's unlikely that it happens. But that's what I love about swarms. It's just they're just an amazing sight to see.
Well, Georgia, I appreciate you coming on the show and giving us this wonderful information. If anybody has any more questions for her, please go to our Facebook groups, Intelligent Ramblings Friends, and there you can ask questions and I'll get them to her. And one thing else I might want to mention, a small thing about Georgia, she is a master photographer. What? Wow.
So I have a lot of pictures of bees.
I bet you do have a lot of pictures of bees. I would love to see them, and would like to have you back on, but interview you as a photographer next time.
Sure, not a problem. Or if you ever want to suit up and get out there in the bees, you can come out here and maybe do a show from the bee yard too.
Oh, wow. That would be absolutely cool. Absolutely cool. Well, I appreciate you being here. And like I said, if you have any more questions that you want to ask her, go to Intelligent Ramblings Groups, Intelligent Ramblings Friends. That's our group page. Intelligent Ramblings is our page, our Facebook page, but the Friends is the group page. Once again, thank you, and we will talk to you very soon.
Sounds good. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there's two of us. Yeah, there's four of us.
Here we are.
Okay.
That was interesting about bees.
Yeah, that was extremely
Very
interesting.
If I understood right, she had 200 pounds from one thing and then 500 from another. 300 from another. That's 500 pounds of honey.
300 one year and 200 1 year.
Oh, it was a year. I thought it was like one section and then the other. Still,
Allie
that's a lot
said
of
she
honey.
would love to see them, and it would be awesome. It would be awesome. I would love to see that. That would be, that's something to think about. How I can figure out how we could broadcast from. We broadcast from a couple different cities, so why not from a beehive? Why not? Guys, I appreciate it. Anybody got any last finishing remarks?
I've got
great.
one. Can I go back to something
A couple
that
of
Joel
things.
said
I
earlier?
remember when we were out
Go
in
ahead.
the woods. Well,
John?
actually not in the woods. We're at an old house. Me
Oh,
and my buddy Greg Red. Go ahead, John. Go ahead first.
I'm sorry.
All right,
I'll
John.
go fast, and we'll get your Greg Red story because I want to hear that. So Joel was saying, I'm just going to put that right there. This comment of Joel's. Now, does the Biden administration and any other administration, do they drive a narrative on Facebook and Twitter? Oh, yeah. Absolutely they do. As do all the candidates, people in Congress, the lobbyists, everybody else has a point of view, an angle that they're working on. It's just that probably it's not to the extent where they actually control a whole lot. I think they just push their narrative as much as they can.
your agenda.
Yeah.
Gary, Greg Red story.
All right.
Quick.
All right, here we go. Quick. Three things. Quick. Greg and I were at an old house. We tore away the wall, and it was covered with a honeycomb. So we robbed those bees. We tried to get some smoke going so they would lessen the chances of being stung. We probably still got stung, but we got some good honey out of that. And they were wild bees too. That was great. Williams, Matty Ice retires. He probably deserved a lot better than he got with the Falcons. I wish he'd had a better supporting cast. Numbers may still get him in the Hall of Fame. That remains to be seen. But remember, he wasn't the one that blew that lead in the Super Bowl. It was the defense. And Scotty Scheffler not only won the Masters, he just won again. He is playing at a level that Tiger Woods used to play at, and he's done it very quietly. But the people in the golf world know who Scotty Scheffler is. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and the Braves are still winning 3-1 in the bottom of the sixth.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, guys.
They're playing well. They are playing well. All right.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you guys. You mean a lot to me. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we love you, man.
All right.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.